All right, welcome to our Together Tech Roundtable. I noticed you muted as soon as we went live. I see how I'm the one doing the intro. We are going to be sharing about our projects, giving a quick elevator pitch to catch people up who don't know about them, and any barriers we are facing. And then it sounds like we have a project to concentrate on and brainstorm from the pre-talk, if that is what comes up. So who would like to start with their description, where they are? I'm gonna go with not me because I have to actually think about it.
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. So the general project that I usually talk about here is Goaliebot. It's an online character that helps, that as everyone explains their pros and cons for us taking a collaborative action, it helps us all kind of understand what's the right thing to do. And Goaliebot's kind of a social mediator at at society scale, in theory. It's just an experiment right now. And then I also want to talk about having to do a lot more caregiving to my mother. So I wanted to talk about having a co-op that works on finding solutions to make it easier, including, just processes, but also technology and devices that might help in that area, and having people come together and all kind of contribute money and time to do the research and just make our lives a little easier. So we can talk about that after the intros if people want to. Hey, Joe, you want to show us, or Dan?
Yeah, I can riff off that because I'm also a live-in caregiver. I take care of a stroke survivor, 78-year-old gentleman who's father of my best friend that lives upstairs, but I actually met his father before I met him. It's kind of a long story, but yeah, he's actually a great person to be a companion and caregiver with. But I recently was on a panel this morning about technology in Africa, and it really focused this idea I have for a permaculture global freedom of movement trail that would like knit together all the permaculture installations. So I'm kind of excited about integrating that with a token that would do like biospheric quality proof of value, kinds of things. So we can go into that direction later. And thanks for letting me be here. I'm complete.
You really want to go?
Sure. My project is Confraudy, which is also related to WikiLection that I've been talking about for a while. It is a information platform to help fight misinformation. I posted a job posting on Upwork maybe a week and a bit ago to try to start to set up a weekly meeting with a development expert of some stripe, partially for the obvious advice, and then partially just to sort of kick my own ass. And if I put something on the calendar every week, that is the kind of thing that actually gets me going, which even though I haven't hired someone yet, it's all already kind of been starting to work. So that's where that's been at. Is I will possibly be hiring someone soon, or might just skip that step now that I've actually got a fair amount of the content and just hire a developer.
Awesome. Peer coaching is going well. We're not where I wanted us to be, but we've also doubled twice in the last 3 months since we started doing it in this way. We are going to be starting even though we don't have enough people necessarily coming to the Tuesday one, there's enough people who've attended to start their own sessions. There'll be one on Sunday as well, which might get way more attendance because it's not in the middle of the workday for the West. And we'll still have this one because it's also around our board meeting. And I have just been playing on Discord. Discord has grown on me in the last little while with so many people having projects on there. It seems to be a better way to do like Facebook groups. And that is all my update is. I'm just letting the universe unfold. People invite people to peer coaching. They come as they come. We're figuring it out. We're having an open house 15 minutes before for people who've attended a few times to find out more about the bigger vision.
I love that name, peer coaching. It's not something you hear every day. You do it well.
It's exactly what it is. It's like we coach each other at a peer level. Here's advice. If you want to take it, take it. And I would love to move on to the next part. Let's brainstorm how we have a co-op for caregivers. It's one of the things that because you guys are looking after people that I'm assuming you love and care about. But I also believe that there's a bunch of people who are getting to that age, and the boomers have changed everything as they've grown up. And the boomers' children aren't as responsible to that generation as previous ones. And in like, people are disowning their parents. People are, and so we're going to have an entire society that we need to care for our elders without it necessarily being on children, even though that might be what we focused on. But I need to get that off.
Yeah.
Or focus on
Yeah.
the parents who
And
we
it
love
also,
and look after.
yeah, and it also would cover adults who have children that might have some sort of cognitive issues or anything like that.
Yeah, good point.
Anytime where you're having someone, where you're trying to help someone stay as independent as possible is kind of the way I'm phrasing it. So for my example, my mom does live separately. She's about 1.5 miles away, but I'm over at her place. Now it's 3 times a week. Before it was like once a month. So it's gotten more intense. So some of the tools I'm building myself is like, she wants to keep shopping on Amazon, but she accidentally buys, she bought 50 tea boxes, each with like 50 each. So she has like 1,000 little tea bags that I have to help her drink. I guess we could have returned that. Anyways, stuff like that. So she just accidentally buys things that doesn't fit her diet and stuff like that. So I created a browser plugin that hides the actual, not the buy button, but the purchase, after you build up your list. She can't accidentally actually buy it. And then I have to go in and click it. So little tools like that. It'd be nice to have right now there's she's nervous about answering phone calls because on the Android phones you have to swipe it a certain way, like on the iPhones. And there's no, it's funny, they let you say, oh, you don't have to swipe, but then you have to have this other button on your screen that just hangs around that's for some other assistive use. And it's like they force these features to be tied together, all the features where you might, someone who's not very dexterous or stuff like that, they force them to, if you turn one on, like several turn on, and it's like, well, that doesn't fit everybody. Anyways, so someone to like, if we want to make those plugins a little bit more professional and a little bit more hardened, well, to where they're less buggy, and other people would want to chip in for stuff like that, and maybe even build there's an Android phone that's easier to use for people, but the software still sucks. So, improving the software on the cell phones and stuff like that, or figuring out, like, she can't use Alexa because her cadence is off and the device times out or doesn't listen. Anyways, Alexa, the timing's a little weird, and there might be ways to adjust that in the software, but someone has to go in and do the research and figure out how to do that, and then write a blog post to help other people do it. So just a group of people that want to do that. So I was going to be going on Reddit and other places where I've heard some of these groups these people are, but I don't think the community is well organized. So it might be also building that up and doing Kickstarters or GoFundMes for some of these tools. Anyways, that's the thought. I don't know if y'all have any suggestions or improvements. Or
I believe there's an entire community of people who have disabilities and who they've been dealing with them their whole life. Whereas when we age and we acquire disabilities, a lot of those, like, they've been solved to some degree by other people in the accessibility space who've been dealing with them their whole lives, to be able to have those two work together with people who actually know how to make the tech to solve those problems, to know what's available right now that makes this more accessible, and what it needs to be made, and how do we integrate that together. I don't know how to do that, but communication with those two communities of making even gaming it becomes accessible because people want to be able to play games, and you maybe shake, or there's other things that are going on that make it not not work, voice to text, and
Mhm.
Alexa not understanding children also. But
Yeah, I was really surprised with where the state of accessibility is, because I hear in the dev world, I hear people talking about all the time and how they're doing that. And the Android phone has a lot of features for like people with shaky hands and stuff like that. It's just it's implemented very poorly. So it's there. I was really surprised at how bad it is for what's there. So finding the communities of people that even just the people that use those tools themselves and don't have caregivers or need caregivers. Yeah. So I'm if anyone knows of any of those online communities, I've actually done some searching, not a lot, but enough that it's kind of like, oh, I thought it'd be easier. I thought I'd be able to like helping my parents stay independent, and I would get like 4 or 5 groups, but it wasn't. Didn't happen. So if anyone knows any suggestions to that, and anyone who may be listening to this later, feel free to reach out to me. And I don't know, Dan, if there's, I guess one of the things that I want to do is brainstorm on like what's the first, get a group of 4 or 5 people, and what's the first thing we want to put together and either fund someone to do the research or to build something. What's the tool that group needs, as opposed to just focusing on what I need to make their lives easier.
Yeah, I've noticed there's a lot of unacknowledged ageism in society, both at both extremes of the spectrum. Older and younger people are kind of routinely neglected with the existing social mechanisms, and I think that's a great jujitsu point to attack. Not to use like warfare models sounding things, but no, I just to clarify, I am in a spot where I've been on the ballot twice for city council, and I've doubled my vote count from 2018, 2,000 votes, 2020, 4,000 votes. So I'm going to run again in 2022. If I can get 8,000 votes, I'll be great, because if I can keep that doubling thing up, I'll be on the city council by 2026, which is fine. And like, I just want to do it like as the most organic. I'm keeping the money out of politics by not spending any. I kind of consider this as a way of getting more municipal talk time than you get, other than the 3 minutes per every 2 weeks they give the public comment period. When you're actually a vetted, you went around and collected 25 signatures to stand for city council in Thousand Oaks, California, which is where I am, by the way, Ventura County. So I'm having a lot of public benefit fun with it, because I'm kind of a in the mode of like the Pirate Party poetician, gal in Iceland, who said, I will do what you want, or you can fire me. It's kind of like a techno democracy. It's like a fusion of technocracy and democracy. But anyway, to wind it back toward caregiver resources, yeah, I think a lot can be done on that in that front, and so I can be a resource person to test out kind of the weirdo independent government guy, creating municipal resolutions, which is actually a great, the whole municipal resolution thing. I don't know if you know about those. They're basically like, little 1-page documents.
So I'm just bringing it back to the topic at hand, which is
we could do caregiver municipal resolutions and share them amongst the 10,000 major cities of the world, and that would be a great way to kickstart the topic. So I'm complete. Thanks.
Like the cities coming up with a plan for the elders, for these different categories.
Yeah, an integrated elder care plan,
and sharing that, which
that
is not
work.
the people themselves having the conversation and coming up with it, which is the more powerful. But
and
like
it should work at a citywide level pretty easily, I think. Yeah.
And sharing between the cities that's not going through the government, and even just this is not necessarily going to be helping your mother directly, but having that information of that score of like how are cities dealing with elders, what are the best places to live when you have mobility issues, when you have like scoring those kind of things. Those are more to help with the ageism and help with the ableism in society. They're not necessarily going to get your day-to-day life run, but finding out from people who are both caregivers and needing caregiving what that looks like and how we can support each other as a community so that it's not as big an impact on one person's life. It can be share in the grocery shopping, share in the company. And like, I haven't had to caregive an adult besides for short periods. So I don't know what the day-to-day looks like to, for them and you to be able to better create that.
What if we could redefine caregiving as ageism facilitating? So it would cover like both ends of the spectrum. Like if you're helping a young person or an older person, you know, you're both doing caregiving on the both of those spectra, you know. So that's just a thought that occurred to me. might be a way to do a census. You know, how many people in your little neighborhood unit are doing, you know, ageism facilitation?
Yeah, I think that's a good thought.
Is there a parallel part to GitHub or something where you can start peer groups? Because I feel like there's
there is. You know, people list stuff on GitHub that's not necessarily a bunch of JavaScript code. It's kind of a manifesto. You could put a manifesto up on GitHub and sort of start aggregating all this open source kind of talent toward it.
Because I feel like starting a caregiving tech one. With
oh my God! Yeah, I think that's
also
logical,
dealing with caregiving.
Totally logical next step. Yeah, I mean, GitHub is great. It's just got the, you know, full open source ethic, you know, through and through. I mean, you can't get like any more open source than GitHub, it seems like, and I don't think enough people know about it or take advantage of it.
Yeah, we might want a slightly more user-friendly UI if you want collaborative editing of documents that's then visible. GitHub's still a bit clumsy for non-devs.
But
maybe shareable Google Docs, for example, or Google Sheets. Yeah, I like both of those.
If you find a group of people who are going through the same experience of caregiving their parents who are also in tech, it's like not necessarily meeting about the tech, but meeting about the other piece. You're going to almost automatically come up with a shared tech idea that you guys are actually skilled enough to create and can also potentially be skilled enough to create a crowdfunding campaign to crowdfund the rest of it or to crowdfund enough to pay you guys to do it since you'll probably work.
Yeah, and I think the caregiving applies equally well to young and old. You know, actually, I think there's a real convergence that can happen between caregiving for both sides of the age spectrum.
They can work really well together if the older people like younger people. There's a lot of like seniors' homes are also with daycares and how well that goes together. Or people in college working as caregivers, getting a room and board situation and company without and getting slightly cheaper rent or even free rent while going to university. And coordinating that would help for people that don't have a Bentley. Son.
I mean, imagine how, you know, amazed like an old folks home would be if a bunch of kids came to visit them, you know, every weekend. You know, it'd be like therapy kids, or, you know, they do like therapy pets for prisoners or something. You know? Adopt a shelter kid.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I guess I just need to find some communities that already exist and start pulling people on what they'd want to do and get it, you know, and seeing if people are willing to put in a little money to save a little time.
If it helps in any way, if you do get a group of people together or want to help, we could do a solution raising on a more particular topic like caregiving our parents or how to shop for, I don't know, whatever, if it helps. I help you. And if you find people, I can always facilitate that. I won't have much to contribute, but.
Or what if we redefined it as humanity giving, you know, or something like that, you know, it might open it up a bit too.
Yeah.
But I still think that ageism is like the biggest unacknowledged unfair discrimination in our society right now. And you've got both on the ends of the spectrum that prove it.
Ageism is weird because we all theoretically, if we're lucky, age. But everyone who goes through that process to get to that place has gone through their entire life in a very ableist society. And it's only once it kind of hits you that it starts. It's like there's people who deal with elder their whole life. They're in pain their whole life. They have memory issues. They have mobility issues. And it's if we could kind of, I don't know, like as humans, realize that we are all going to get there if we're lucky. How do we design a society around people who have different cognition, people who have different, dexterity and mobility issues instead of...
It is definitely a cognitive bias, because when someone who's twice as old as someone else asks them to wait X amount of time, that is X times 2 amount of time for the person being asked to do that. So, like if an 80-year-old asks a 8-year-old to wait 5 minutes, that's the equivalent of the 80-year-old being asked to wait like 2 days or something, because that's how time is not passing at a uniform rate, for people of different age spectra. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it speeds up as you get older, unless that stops at some
Yeah,
point.
that's one way of expressing it. But there's this cognitive bias that we think time is this linear thing that's moving at the same rate for everyone. And no, if you look at it as a percentage of your whole lifespan, it's not moving at the same rate. That's kind of what I'm trying to put out with that comment. Anyone else?
Of course, whenever I come up with a new idea, I look for domains, which is really kind of a waste of time. I need to just put it out there and start
I've done
talking
that
to people.
myself. I can relate. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I got New Coin Report.
Yeah. I need to stop doing that. It's a bad habit, buying too many domain names. So Dan, on your running for office, what level are you running for?
This is Thousand Oaks
Council?
City Council. So
City
it's
Council.
basically the city is a municipal corporation. There are 5 board members of that corporation, and they call that city council, and it's at large. In this case, it's not by districts, but I think that the district by district representation is more techno-democratic, which is I'm kind of running under the United States Transhumanist Party platform, which I think is a very well thought out document for what I am recently calling techno-democracy. I think there's good parts of technocracy and there's good parts of democracy, and if we could fuse the two, we'd have basically like a techno-democratic form of governance, which I want to make as voluntary as possible. I think there's so many things that are being done in an involuntary fashion that could be made far more voluntary and far more addressing existential level threats to society. That's basically, I didn't see that being done. So, like Bucky Fuller said, if you see something that needs doing and no one's doing it, go do it. That was like the Bucky Fuller imperative. So I'm been a big fan of his work. Anyone else?
Yeah, so we were, I was just wondering, because both Adriel and I have tools that could be used for government to help make more rational decisions. And I think Adriel is also working on helping people choose who to vote for. So I didn't know if I was just brainstorming to see whether there was a way to use our situation, your situation, both as a way for us to work on the tools a bit, and also to maybe provide you some benefit, maybe creating some content to get the word out. But I don't know. I just thought that might be interesting to discuss.
Oh yeah, I totally consider my candidacy a stress test on the existing system. And actually, there's a pre-announced United States Transhumanist Party candidate, Tom Ross, has announced he's going to run with a non-human AI running mate, as well as picking 6 of his cabinet members in advance. And he says, I don't expect to win, but this is a stress test on the existing system. So I think that's an incredibly useful thing to do. Destructive testing and stress testing is like an acknowledged part of scientific engineering practice. So I'm willing to be a public person and throw myself as a guinea pig into the gears of that wheel. I'm complete.
Yeah. I was just thinking. So, like for Goaliebot, my process, it's kind of helping people kind of understand complex issues. So, I don't know. I'm finding that every issue I tackle is a lot more complex than I thought, which is part of the good thing about Goaliebot is it helps you kind of have a little bit of intellectual humility because you start looking into something. It's like, oh, there's a lot of factors I didn't think of. But if there was a local topic that you were using as part of your platform, potentially that could be a topic that I could do in Goaliebot as well. Are you doing kind of content marketing for people to get to know you or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of intentional community. And I think if you look at the Dunbar number of Robin Dunbar, anthropologist, that says you can have about 150 stable relationships in an average lifetime. That's also about the size of people that are on my block. If you look at, there's like 30 houses on Norman Avenue in Shadow Oaks neighborhood. So how great would it be if we could just start creating digital autonomous tokens that would interface with other tokens that would create like little Dunbar intentional communities eventually, if it was allowed to sort of run in multiple iterations. I'm probably getting, a little ahead of myself or out there, but I think that's really what we're trying to fix, all the ad hocracy that created this kind of wonky civilization, and kind of walk back that to create this beautiful working, kind of circular economy of social ecology, if you could describe it that way. And I'm optimistic about it. I think we've got the tools, and we've only scratched the surface of how to use them. So it's really exciting.
So I was just thinking, is there a topic in your district that people are currently concerned on and trying to solve? A specific item, not something more general like infrastructure?
Yeah, you know what? I was on nextdoor.com. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that platform, but there's a lot of neighbors get to chat with each other about different topics. And I think one topic that comes up, it might sound kind of silly, but the leaf blower people that seem to come around at 6 a.m. all days of the week and blow the dust from one side of the property to another side of the property. And actually, this has sort of been addressed recently with a bill that's phasing out small engines in California. But I actually talked to our city manager about this issue when I was my last election cycle, and he said, yeah, we've looked at that, and that's such a third rail. It's like people are equally split. Half the people like the leaf blowers, and half the people don't like them. But maybe it's a good test case, because we have nearby cities like Ojai that have just straight out banned gas-powered leaf blowers, and we have another city to the south, Westlake Village, that has said they can only operate, between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. But I think, it's interesting. If I can go off on another little mini tangent here, you guys know what a political action committee is. You've heard of PACs, right?
Yeah.
It's actually one of the easiest things to do. You don't even need to report a PAC until you've raised $1,000. So I'm thinking, what if each block said, okay, we're the Norman Shadow Oaks Neighborocracy PAC, and we're going to start raising $1,000, and we'll have meetings to decide how to spend that $1,000 once we raise it. And just what if every block in the world had a little, easily managed kind of PAC, co-op committee? I think it would be more like a co-op hybrid PAC kind of. It would be because you would do consensus kind of Zoom, well, like Jubilee does. We would have meetings like this, and assuming you guys all lived on my block, we'd say, well, we've raised this much money. What do we want to do? What's our big issue? Do we want to hire a lobbyist to, tell the leaf blowers to go take a change to electric, or help them change to electric? Because it's really the pollution and the noise that the gas leaf blowers have that you wouldn't have with electric leaf blowers.
Is it just the fuel? Because I like the fact that they're not collecting them and getting rid of them. They're just blowing them on.
Yeah, they should actually be they should actually be vacuuming it up and putting it in green waste kind of compost.
Seems like it's like a really weird thing to do.
No, that's a good point, because you're just making a problem. You're blowing your organic waste debris over to someone else's, side of the street.
Part of the problem with a pack, and part of the problem with cities in general, is that you do not choose your neighbors in any way. You don't actually, besides being in the same area, your kids may be going to the same school, you don't have a lot in common, whereas intentional communities are set up to more choose your neighbors and be there for that. And I don't know if there's a way within a city structure where you do have just you buy your house and you live there, or you rent from a landlord, how you create communities that can work together. Because even in intentional communities, it's hard. And
yeah. I mean, I'm saying we're about 150 Dunbar steps away from making each block a Dunbar intentional community.
But it's not a Dunbar because it didn't choose to be a Dunbar. In fact, most of it is you ignore your neighbors.
Yeah. Right now we're at the Dunning-Kruger community, not the Dunbar community. But sorry, that was a silly joke, and I just had a senior moment about what I was going to say.
Well, I think a lot of times, so what I think my lawn care group do is they actually mow in the leaves mostly, and what they should be doing is they're blowing the cut grass and the mulched up leaves from the walkways and the driveways into the grass itself, and then you get mulching.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. Self-mulching.
So yeah, I don't know. A lot of times, I don't. I think the grass that goes out on the street, they do sometimes just blow it into the neighbor in front of the neighbor's house. But if I saw them doing that, I would be telling them not to. So you still might have some noise and additional pollution if you're going with gas. I assume electrics are quieter.
Oh yeah, they are. Yeah,
but yeah, I don't, because a lot of the noise is actually the air going through the device. They are pretty darn loud. Because I have an electric air blower, and it's pretty loud on its own.
Yeah, but it's half the noise, and it at least it's not creating that noxious smoke, because they often don't tune these things up, and you can smell them a mile away, or seems like.
Is there, because we could talk about whether we think leaf blowers, that makes much more sense. I was totally picturing someone coming outside and blowing it all off their lawn, so their lawn was green, but off the sidewalks makes sense.
Yeah, that's a little exaggeration, maybe.
How do you come to an agreement with neighbors, especially neighbors that you didn't choose, where they're not beholden to you, right? The city makes bylaws, and then you phone the bylaw and you're like, they're not following the rules, more so than actually going and talking to them and saying, hey, I don't, because it's then you can create rules that actually make sense, where people are shift work and we don't want it at any time, or other people like, we're only going to do it on Sundays, so we're not doing it throughout whatever. How do we come to actual consensus or around?
Well, I think the skin in the game is curb appeal, because everyone's property value is dependent on the curb appeal of all these different houses on a block, for example. And, then you get into things like, could we have a skill share, a time bank, where people just trade, I'll walk your dog if you, trim my hedge once a week, we'll trade services. And actually these have been done, alternative kind of economic things like this, go back to like Ithaca bucks, and the IRS says there's no tax liability generated when people barter services. So that's a good thing. Then you could have tool sharing too, with the neighborhood skill shares can go neighborhood tool shares. So there's a lot of nice organic basis there. Everyone wants their property value to be high, and everyone wants their neighborhood to be safe, and everyone wants to know their neighbors. So let's leverage these initial conditions and see what happens.
It might be a bit of an exaggeration for people to say that everyone wants their property values high.
Yeah.
Because I know several people that have junked cars in their front lawn, and I don't think they care.
Edge
The irony is
cases.
only if you're selling, you want your
But
property value.
the
high.
majority of the people do. But the question is, how do you handle the difference between that majority and that minority opinion? Because I do have some, like last month, my neighbors had a whole bunch of water coming out of their house and draining into my backyard. And then still on the other side, I think I think their sprinkler is broken, but it's not like visually spraying water up in the air. I think it just generates this puddle down there. So I have to go kind of talk to them about that. But I'm not exactly sure if it's their sprinkler system or my sprinkler system. So yeah, but it's an interesting thing to figure out how to, anytime you kind of make a law like that or a housing, we have HOAs down here. I'm not in one, housing authority. They, there are usually some kind of winners and losers on that, because if you don't care to mow your lawn, or actually I would like to change my lawn into some sort of more natural, have something that bees can come in and requires less watering, if any. But I haven't looked up my city's restrictions on that, and then also do it in a way that my neighbors wouldn't find, too bad. That's something I'd like to kind of figure out how to do some xeriscaping or whatever. But yeah, if you think about if there's someone that's working nights and trying to sleep during the day, and people are coming on with a lot of blowers, you can cut it at half with the electric. So maybe that's a good rule. Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking one of the things is that there is usually someone who doesn't care. So just going with the majority rule, you get the tyranny of the majority. But it'd almost be nice if there was this way of saying, hey, there's this group of us that we know are going to be inconvenienced by this thing that the majority needs. What could we do to compensate that group? Right. So if someone's sleeping for the day, maybe you could apply to the city, and people's taxes will go to soundproofing your house or your apartment a little more. So we can blow our leaves around, stuff like that, to where instead of just saying majority rules, make it be like, let's see if there's a way to get the needs handled for everyone, and some sort of compensating if someone else's needs disadvantages you.
Or even if we could get all the gardening, blowing done on one day a week instead of spread out across 7 days. I mean, that would even be a good outcome.
Yeah, at least it's happening. Or 1 day per block or something.
Yeah. Like garbage
the trash.
collection is
Yeah, like the same week the garbage truck comes by and bangs around. Yeah.
That's a great idea, actually, right there.
Yeah.
Let's just sync it up with garbage collection days.
However, you want the leaves collected before garbage because you want to put it with the garbage.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes, but
Maybe
also
the day before. Yeah, good point.
Garbage day cycles here. Like every time it's a holiday, it moves another one, which is a lot harder to kind of, not necessarily because you're putting the garbage out, but just it's not necessary.
It would give you time to put the green waste in the green waste thing.
Yeah. And do we have enough lawn care companies and people? And that may be really inconvenient if you're, if that's a day that you work and you do your own lawn and stuff. Yeah, thinking through all that stuff. But the ability to kind of brainstorm things like that together and problem solve, and then, try to find a way to compensate the people that it disadvantages. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of municipal load balancing on a lot of practical subjects.
Yes. That seems like something that you could like in example of having a lawn company do it and doing it on certain days, setting up almost like a group buy in a neighborhood, so you're killing two birds with one stone. Hey, instead of paying $100 a visit, would you rather pay $50 a visit, and we do your whole neighborhood at once?
Exactly.
And then see how many people you
purchasing.
can. So you're saying, hey, we're saving money, and I don't have to do it, and it's all happening in one day, so that that neighbor that won't shut up about leaf blowers can finally.
You just walk.
Saving money does wonders for complainers.
You could just walk the lawnmower down all the houses in one row and turn around and come to them all, right?
You mow the entire block. That's funny. I used to have hedges. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
They were in the way.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of worker-owned cooperatives. So this would be like a neighborhood-owned, landscaping cooperative.
Yeah, I do feel that though a lot of people don't, because we always talk about government, people getting involved with the government, but I think a lot of people would be happy if government ran efficiently and they didn't have to worry about it or deal with it. So I think our plans need to allow for that. Of course, if we all worked on it and if there was an efficient process, it wouldn't take much maintenance, but keeping it as low impact on people's lives is a design goal, I guess.
It'd be nice to have the city bylaws at one level, because we probably need those. And then like as a community, you can put new ones in place or take them away for this. And does that mean our neighbors are beholden to the things we decide together or not, right? Maybe everyone decides that kids can't ride outside without bicycle helmets, but you're okay with your kid doing it. I mean, that might be a family issue, even if everyone else has decided together. I mean, those things happen with the intentional communities.
Yeah, I think anything that moves toward greater intentionality can easily become, a consensus-driven neighborhood level issue. And this actually relates back to the caregiver thing, because Larry's main activity is going out and getting out in the sun and picking up yard waste and stuff. That's like his big way of staying active at his older year level. So we're actually not totally going off topic here, but just thought I'd put that in.
Yeah.
I would really like to see sharing of labor within a community where you are doing the things that you like doing, right? If you have a leaf blower and you really want to go and blow leaves, why not do it for your block? Whereas somebody else can go and wash windows. Someone else, like, if you want someone in your house, wash your toilets, or do, like, there's people who that bothers and people who it doesn't, and people who wouldn't want to be in the house, but to be able to coordinate those things on, like, how do we make each other's lives easier and all share in the benefits?
Yeah, how do we take care of each other? Because it's probably what we're here to do. I think you get a lot of reward from helping others. They've actually done studies, and it's way more beneficial to help others than to just be selfish. It's like a life extending thing. I think both ends. It's like a win-win. So we're here to extend each other's lives and quality and quantity.
Yeah.
Pet care. I mean, I would love to take someone's dog for a walk during the day.
Yeah.
All day, and it would help them out. And it's like there's a certain amount where it does help to get paid, right? Where like you're staying at home, you don't necessarily have enough money. But also, I like doing that stuff for free. I like the thought of helping them out and getting that benefit in return. Like, I want to be able to do this thing, or sharing, and I'll clean your toilet, you make my bed, and come into my house every morning at 9 a.m. and make all the beds on the block.
Like, I would love to do like musical comedy for aging, dementia patients, because think of what you could get away with. It'd be like the easiest audience to entertain. I could practice on regular audiences later, but no, we actually have like a little live-in elder care home just two doors away, and I mean, I'm sure these people are routinely neglected and routinely incredibly bored and underserved, and if I could swing some kind of you know, a little performance gig. That'd be a lot of fun for me.
Activities, I'm sure they already have, but like make activities specifically for dementia patients, like people who are losing their memory and can't really, like, I don't know, because I haven't experienced that. I experienced short-term memory issues, but not to the point where I forget who, like, it doesn't get scary in the same way. It's just like, oh, right, that was supposed to happen. I don't know, like how to participate in a conversation, how to participate in even watching something where it works with you. I think we are getting better as generations to work with it instead of like constantly reminding them they have it, or, you know, doing things that were maybe not in the best interest. But maybe you can't decide.
Well, I know I'm going to be 62 on the 21st, and for the life of me, I was trying to think of two different things recently: Ethel Merman and bar mitzvahs, and it was like a totally senior moment. I knew the thing I was thinking of, but I couldn't put a name with it. That's just like, you know, an example. You know, I used to know Ethel Merman, and I used to know what bar mitzvahs were. You know, it's just like, wow, did I lose those brain cells recently? But, you know, I guess they're sort of back now. But, you know, I mean, we all have these senior moments as the ages encroach. But anyway, maybe there's a comedy bit there.
As long as it's laughing with people and not at them. I think it'll be awfully hard with certain groups.
Yeah, and I think humor is great for neuroplasticity. So for what that's worth, you know.
No, I gotta laugh with my brain.
Am I laughing at my brain, or is it laughing at me? I can't tell.
Oh, it's both.
Yeah, I think it is both. So, Adriel, I want to hear about Wiki Lections. Are you still doing that? Could I incorporate that with my city council run?
Possibly. I mean, when the sort of actual site is online and it has data ready to go, I do plan to start with, at the municipal level, because it's sort of, smaller and just in all scales, except for possibly the number of candidates that can get a bit out of control in city elections, but usually, like the number of topics and all that sort of thing. I think there's some.
Yeah, and I think just looking at policy data points and the outcomes of different time, delimited policy data points, you could get all kinds of interesting trend lines. Feedback.
What sort of policy data points are you thinking about?
Oh my gosh, everything governance does is like, housing policies or, regulatory policies, and then
I see. So like keeping track of in a certain city or in a region, like here's the housing prices, here's the things they have control over, here's how it changed.
Right.
And then you can overlay that on like, how did house sales go? How much did it actually, how much did one affect the other?
Correlate it with approval ratings of politicians, even, and vote data. Because there was actually a group called the Open Event Data Alliance, and this was like an open source thing that was proposed. I don't know if it went anywhere, but they were going to use like the set of political decision making, which is a very well understood data set, that you can validate. Let's say how people voted, what the outcomes were. What they wanted to happen, what actually happened, all those kinds of things. And this is a whole process of changing from top down to bottom up in terms of policy governance.
Right. Yeah. And a key part of the election side of Wiki Election isn't just sort of saying, here's, based on what you're interested in, here's who you should probably vote for. It's also, here's what people are saying during the elections. Here's the campaign promises that are being made. Here's the evidence that they made them. And then the person that wins, you can now start to record on, okay, here's their campaign promises. What have they done in their time in office? So during the next election, you can say, hey, the last election, here's the election promises. Here's the proof they said it. Here's what they did during their time in office. Here's how the public thought about what they did and what they tried and what they actually achieved. And now you can start to loop that into every election going forward. So a lot of it is about building that sort of historical, here's what happened. Here's all the evidence. You can't hide. You can't say that you didn't say that thing. Here's 38 videos from 38 different video angles of you saying that thing.
Yeah, right. And if we could walk that back to a city like Thousand Oaks that has 120,000 population, which is conceivably 1,000 different Dunbar little blocklets, and say, well, how did each blocklet respond to this policy prescription over time?
Yeah.
A new meaning for blockchain. The neighborhood blockchain. So yeah, some interesting things that I can hopefully run on. A shameless pirate poetician with no money.
You said the election is next year?
2022 November. There will be
okay.
I think three council seats up for grabs. And all you have to do is get 25 signatures of registered local voters to get on the ballot. So that was a pretty easy bar. But yeah, I mean, you get invited to all kinds of League of Women Voters debates and city, like what are they called? Chamber of Commerce puts on debates, and yeah, so it's like about 8 different candidate fora that you can be in, once you've crossed that bar. I encourage everyone to try it. I mean, really, there's just a horribly low level of civic engagement in most communities. So I'm kind of being a cheerleader for that,
One of the things that came up this week after our solution raising that I did with Dan, and I also briefly mentioned it to Adriel. We've had this conversation before many a time, Adriel and I, about a fantasy political game.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
I'm just gonna mute you for a second, Dan, because the background or the added stuff makes my brain stop thinking in one direction. Having it be at a city level where you're competing both internally with the city, just like if we were competing on a Canadian level, it would be like you'd pick a faux member of parliament, a certain cabinet number, right? And you'd follow them and see are they voting with their constituents. Doing it at a citywide level gets people more engaged at the city level. And that's also already where we're in competition with each other, right? In hockey games and football games, it's like city versus city. So having it be able to compete internally, where it's, in Vancouver specifically, I think there's 9 city council, there's the mayor, 9 city council members, 7 or 8 school board, and then a parks board. And so taking the square root rounded up, that's the number that you have. And so you're going to have people have the exact same amount, but just saying, hey, did you pick the ones that voted with their constituents? I don't know exactly how it works. There's an internal version and an external version where you're also comparing how well did that are now in good education, low property taxes, and then also how does it also compare to their improvement? How much did they improve it during their time? Did they do what they said? I mean, I care more that you do what they want than you do what you said, but either or, one or the other.
Make policy fun again.
Yeah. I mean, I do like the idea of the metric being, did they vote with their constituents? Because that seems fairly clean. And honestly, elections are mostly BS anyway, because it's like, hey, we're going to take this snapshot in time, see what people think now. Like, how many elections, the outcome would have been different if we knew that COVID was going to happen. And we don't get to make that choice, right? We just get to vote, and then we'll see what happens over the next 4 years. So the idea being, well, if things are working and if that government is effective, in theory, it should be voting with its constituents the majority of the time. And then saying, like, which cities are actually a bit better. And if that actually got competitive, that might drive people to care about politics for only that reason. For only, that city that I hate is beating us? Oh, that's not allowed.
Exactly. And that's the point of having internal and external, is that you're also doing, so you're saying not having an internal one at all, just actually how does the city vote with. That actually probably makes more sense to start with.
I mean, to me, it's sort of from what you were saying, it sounded like the internal was that city itself. So it's sort of that city figuring out, hey, here's this bucket of we all voted for these politicians. Anytime some legislation is proposed, great, we're going to pose that to the member group for that city. And then we're going to compare that to how the person actually voted. And then you can just say, hey, for, Chicago, here's how often that happens, or here's how that number breaks down. And then here's that same number for LA, for Seattle, for each city. And then I think that's sort of what you're talking about for the external, is that number becomes the competition for, it's less about like, oh, I'm, me as a fantasy football player, I picked these players and that got this number. And with all the people you could pick from, it's sort of all about the individual. This sounds like it's more about how is each city doing? So we can just say on a score, which cities are actually representing their constituents the best.
Yeah, or which
I
cities are more civically engaged. I mean, how cool would that be? It's like, hey, Moore Park is beating Thousand Oaks in civic engagement. We need to step up and kick their ass.
I guess that's one of the interesting things is in fantasy football, and I think, I'm not a sports person, so I'm going to completely pull this out of nowhere, but from what I've heard, is those tend to be based on all these like weird niche sport metrics that like ends up with this total score. So you can say, it's this on how often you're voting with this. And then like how many of your campaign promises do people think that you did? And you can have all these different stats. And like in a perfect world where a government is truly aligned with the people, all of these things should be perfect. And then you can start to see like, oh, okay, well, this city is voting with the constituents that are engaged on our platform, but that's a very low number. So oh well, or so that's good, but you want to actually get that number up because this city over here, you're beating them in score, but they have a bigger number, and that counts for more points, or however that ends up happening.
Yeah, the amount of algorithmic processing that goes into something that doesn't really matter, it's just like embarrassing. It's like, what do we have? Like, political power rating, like they have like football power rating. It's some weird arcane algorithm, which lets you rate, one player against another based on like a whole spreadsheet of different statistics, but yeah, federated databases implemented as distributed autonomous organizations, also known as DAOs, is not barely begin to be scratched the surface of. That was an awkward way of saying that, but there's a lot of value to be achieved down this rabbit hole.
To see how you compare, because it's like how many things get passed through city council, how many, how long to take development to more. There's a lot of metrics that you can measure and compare between, but there's also like what Vancouver is going to be talking about, because what they brought to the city council is going to be very different than what Edmonton's talking about or Toronto's talking about. And so it's like, how many did you pass, and did you vote with your people? And comparing things like park to people ratio or education, healthcare, something like COVID hits, and you can collectively come up with a metric that isn't going to necessarily favor Vancouver or Edmonton, but like, hey, how are we doing? What is a metric we can use to measure that compared in different cities? And it will change throughout time. And anytime, how is our recycling program? How is our anything we want to measure and start,
And I think this can be easily done. There's an open source token on the Ethereum blockchain called the Proof of Activity Protocol, POAP.xyz. And you can mint these things and collect them and do digital things with them for zero gas fees, which is amazing, because right now gas fees are incredibly high on the Ethereum blockchain, which is kind of the default blockchain for NFTs and all kinds of digital value assets. So, but I envision, let's make local politics, a digitally valuable, unique souvenir thing, and then we can slice and dice these things and federate them among different databases and do all kinds of interesting things with them, and make it geolocatable too. So if you take a time, a location, an issue, and make that into a POAP token, I think that's probably the future of like local policy governance.
I don't know enough about that at all.
Yeah, it's what I'm kind of working on. It's kind of it's going to take a lot of work.
I think there's definitely room for DAOs. Anything coin and NFT based, I'm always like, it might be nice to be able to if you're not allowed to gamble on politics, if you're not allowed to have money involved, therefore there's a profit incentive to be able to basically launder it into coins so that you could, like, I see Ponzi schemes constantly of like, how is this legal? Oh, because you've made it into coins that we've got no regulation on. Gotcha. To be able to.
But this is basically using bragging rights as value, and no one can like get mad at you for having bragging rights. It's like, okay, if I lose, I'll donate to your charity, which I hate. But if I win, you have to donate to my charity, which I love. That's a way of totally disconnecting, money from bragging rights. I think that's the way to go to avoid the lawyers.
Pay the platform unless you're collecting the money to give to the charities and taking a percentage of it. There has to be like if it's
which I think if you're following the fantasy football like that kind of model, I think that's what they do, right? You pay an X amount of dollars, and then the end winner can get a fair amount of money. If you're the top of like 10,000 people, yeah, you're gonna get
absolutely that would be, but you might not legally be able to do that because it's politics.
I see what you mean, right?
And
but
especially in different cities, different.
You might. I guess part of it is the members wouldn't even need to buy in because they wouldn't get the payout. So it might be sort of a members pay into an end prize pool, knowing that like the cities that are number one, their members will get to vote on where that money goes. It's not going to be like you won't get it, but hey, Chicago, you won. What do you want this to go towards? Most people voted to feed the homeless. Cool. All right, then we'll spend
Michigan water. Can that be our first?
Yeah, I think it's like your reward system bubbles up to the top of the rewards pool. You can create an ecology like that doesn't have to be subject to gambling regulations.
The person could win NFTs or win something that is bragging rights trophies, and then there's also the prize pool that goes to.
Yeah, like there's this incredibly hard race where people go through Death Valley, and all they win is like a big big belt buckle. It's like says they did it.
Well, I think with what we've talked about so far, though, most kinds of competition is about that person competing for themselves, right? Like in the race or in fantasy football or in any of these. It sounds like this is this weird sort of like third party or like kind of your sports team where it's like you hope they win, but your players are kind of your politicians, so you just like hope they do well. And then the thing with sports teams, an entire city is elated or deflated depending on if people that they've never met win a sports game. Sort of similar to that, where it's like, hey, these numbers go up and down. It really just gives publicity to the concept of here's the cities that are voting the most with their constituents, which in theory they should be doing more.
And the takeaway is our team sucked that year. We're going to get better draft players next year.
Right, yeah. That's funny, right? Instead of the whole like, we replaced the coach, so we expect to do better next year. Yeah, we replaced our entire city council, so we expect to do better next time. That'd be great.
I need to win this game that I'm obsessed with. We're going to have to actually go out and vote.
Affecting their lives, you can get people to vote, but having numbers go up and down on the screen for some reason did. I mean, if that worked, I wouldn't complain.
I mean, look at all the energy that's spent on sports and fandom. If we could just shift like 1% of that to the civic engagement arena, oh my God, that would be huge.
So like, I know next to nothing about my civic engagement. I'm like, I know people in my intentional community. We did push this through city council, so I know someone and I know people who've run, and I know, but like I don't really. But it affects me way more. Even property taxes, even though I don't pay property taxes, my landlord does, and they go to schools. They go to my local school that my kid may not go to, or neighbors do. Like it affects you more than the other bigger policies. And it can. I love the fact of Toronto and Ottawa and Montreal and Edmonton and Calgary competing on a civic level of like, instead of like, did your football players beat our football players? I had something to do with that of like, at least we did vote.
Right. It's true. It's more time. I never understood that sports teams just hired players from other cities and even countries and were like, now they represent us? This at least, no, they actually do represent you. Use the people that you picked. Here's your score. Don't like it? Cool. Vote different next time. That's kind of the whole point.
Do you think you can get sponsors based on how many? And we're past the hour. Bentley, do you need to go? I feel like we're always keeping you.
My God. Yeah. Sponsorship is huge on this. Yeah. There's total monetization ability on sponsorship.
Of like per person, however many people like you get, like, there was I think it was in the 90s where there was like somebody got $1 million for a web page and they sold per pixel. Having something like that where you're like, I will sponsor 1,000 people to be part of that, which would be $1,000 a month. Right. And so you get your logo bigger on our sponsor page. It's literally based on pixels and like, hey, we need $1 million a month to run this. I don't know why, but whatever that is. So
or if you did something that gave your landlord a break on his property tax, I mean, maybe there would be a win-win situation there on that too.
I don't really. Oh, you mean like if we lobby our governments on behalf of business, like then we get to make. It's
like if you buy my fantasy political football player I'll give you like 5% off your rent bill this month.
I still don't know how that works, but we should probably say goodbye to YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah.
See you next month.
Bye,
New Year.
Facebook. Live
Last one
long
of
and
2021.
assalamu alaikum. Assalamu live long. That's my traditional blasphemous greeting.
Yeah, maybe we don't do that. All right. Bye, YouTube. Bye, Facebook.
Bye.